Dr. Vethiner stood at the edge of the excavation site, her four eyes blinking in confusion at the readings on her scanner. The dust of the dead world swirled around her team as they worked beneath the pale light of a distant star. Earth had been silent for 3,000 years, yet it continued to surprise the Galactic Archaeological Union with each new dig. She had spent 40 years studying extinct civilizations across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared her for what lay beneath the soil of this forgotten planet. "Director, you need to see this," called Specialist Corvin from the lower levels of the dig. His voice carried a strange mixture of excitement and disbelief that made Vethiner's antennae twitch with curiosity. She climbed down the metal ladder into the pit, her boots crunching on ancient concrete and rusted metal. The humans had built their cities to last, even if they themselves had not survived. Around her, the skeletal remains of what they called a museum stretched out in organized chaos. Glass cases had shattered centuries ago, but their contents remained preserved in the dry atmosphere. Artifacts of a dead civilization, waiting patiently to tell their story. Corvin pointed to a display that had been carefully uncovered from layers of sediment. Inside, Vethiner could see primitive spacecraft models, faded photographs, and documents written in the human language called English. Her translator implant worked quickly to decode the text on a large banner above the display. "The Space Age, Humanity's Journey to the Stars," she read aloud. "Beginning in 1957 with Sputnik." "That's not the interesting part," Corvin said. He walked her further into the room, past displays of bulky white suits and models of rockets that looked impossibly crude. "Look at this section here." The display showed a timeline. Vethiner studied it carefully, her analytical mind working to understand what she was seeing. The timeline showed human space programs developing across different nations simultaneously. The Soviet Union, the United States, China, India, Japan, Europe, private companies with strange names like SpaceX and Blue Origin. They competed against each other, she said slowly. This is consistent with what we know of human tribal behavior. Keep reading, Director. She moved further along the timeline. Her eyes widened as she processed the information. The humans had not simply competed. They had developed entirely separate approaches to spaceflight, different rocket designs, different propulsion systems, different philosophies of exploration. Each group had solved the problem of escaping their planet's gravity in their own unique way, often hiding their methods from one another. "This cannot be correct," Vethiner whispered. "The Galactic Council has records of 1,200 spacefaring civilizations. Every single one of them achieved spaceflight once. A single unified effort by a single culture or government. Never like this." Corvin nodded slowly. "I've already contacted the Union headquarters. They're sending additional teams. Dr. Vethiner, this changes everything we thought we knew about them." The excavation expanded over the following weeks. Teams arrived from across the galaxy, each bringing specialists in different fields. Historians, engineers, psychologists, philosophers, everyone wanted to understand how a single species could have achieved spaceflight not once, but multiple times, through completely independent efforts. Dr. Morrow, a historian from the Collective of Gent, made the first major discovery in what had once been called Russia. His team uncovered the remains of a facility called Baikonur. The documents they found described a program that had put the first living creature into orbit, followed by the first human. They had done this while keeping their methods secret from the rest of their own species, treating knowledge like a weapon to be guarded. At the same time, another team working in a region called Florida found the remnants of a place named Cape Canaveral. Here, a different nation had developed its own rockets, its own spacecraft, its own methods of training humans to survive in the void. They had succeeded in landing humans on their moon using technology developed completely separately from their rivals. "The radiation signatures are different," reported Dr. Thalvin, the chief engineer on the Florida dig. The metallurgy is different. The fuel compositions are different. These two programs shared almost nothing except the goal of reaching space. It's as if two completely separate species developed spaceflight on the same planet. The more they dug, the more impossible the picture became. A nation called China had developed its own space stations using designs that borrowed from both other programs but improved upon them in unique ways. A small nation called India had sent probes to Mars at a fraction of the cost other nations had spent. Private citizens with enough wealth had built their own rockets and launched themselves into space for entertainment. Vethner assembled her team in a temporary shelter they had constructed near the original dig site. Around the table sat representatives from 12 different species, all of them experts in their fields. All of them struggled to comprehend what they had found. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," said Ambassador Errol, a diplomatic observer from the Galactic Council. His crystalline form flickered with agitation. "You are telling me that humans achieved spaceflight at least 7 times independently? 7 completely separate programs?" "More than that," Vethner replied. She activated a holographic display showing a map of Earth. Red dots appeared across the surface, marking dig sites and confirmed launch facilities. "We have found evidence of at least 15 independent spaceflight programs. Government-funded programs from various nations, private companies that developed their own rockets, university research groups that built and launched satellites, even individual enthusiasts who built rockets in their personal dwellings." The room fell silent. Ambassador Errol's form dimmed noticeably as he processed this information. "When my people achieved spaceflight," he said quietly, "it took us 4,000 years of unified effort. Every resource our civilization possessed was directed toward a single goal. We built one ship, launched one mission, and established one colony. That was the pattern followed by every known civilization." "The Vela spent 6,000 years," added Dr. Corvin. "They nearly destroyed themselves in the attempt. When they finally succeeded, they declared it the greatest achievement in their history and swore never to attempt anything so difficult again." Vethner pulled up another display. This one showed a timeline of human spaceflight, reconstructed from the records they had uncovered. The humans achieved their first spaceflight in 1957. By 1969, they had landed on their moon. By 2030, they had established permanent stations in orbit. By 2100, they had colonized Mars and were building ships to explore their outer planets. All of this while fighting wars among themselves, dealing with plagues, and struggling with limited resources. "That's less than 150 years, Errol said. His voice carried disbelief that bordered on accusation. "That's impossible. My people needed 4,000 years of peace and prosperity, and yet the evidence is here," Vethner replied. "Multiple independent programs, competing and cooperating in ways we've never seen before. When one program failed, others continued. When one nation fell behind, its rivals pushed forward. The competition drove innovation at a pace we would consider insane. They called it a space race and treated it like a contest to be won." The investigation continued for months. Teams spread across the dead planet, uncovering more evidence with each passing day. They found the remains of a company called SpaceX that had developed reusable rockets, something no other civilization had ever attempted. The idea of throwing away a spacecraft after one use seemed logical to every other species, but the humans had decided it was wasteful and found a way to land their rockets back on the ground. They found records of a program called Artemis that had returned humans to their moon using technology completely different from the original lunar missions. They found evidence of space stations built by different nations, sometimes cooperating, sometimes competing for resources and prestige. The humans had even allowed tourists to visit these stations, treating the void of space as a destination for entertainment. Dr. Thalvin made a discovery that shocked even the veteran archaeologists. In a facility buried beneath a mountain, she found the remains of a nuclear propulsion program. The humans had been developing ways to use atomic explosions to push spacecraft through the void. The project had been abandoned not because it failed, but because other approaches proved more practical in the short term. They had backup plans for their backup plans. Falvin reported to the assembled team. If chemical rockets had failed, they would have used nuclear propulsion. If that had failed, they were researching ion drives, solar cells, and something they called electromagnetic launch systems. Every time they hit a barrier, they tried to break through it in 10 different ways simultaneously. Failure was never the end. It was simply a reason to try something different. Ambassador Arrow requested a private meeting with Vethner. They walked together through the ruins of what had once been a great city, stepping carefully over debris that had lain undisturbed for millennia. The buildings here had once scraped the sky itself, monuments to human ambition that now stood as silent tombs. The Council is concerned, Iral admitted. This information, if it becomes widely known, could destabilize galactic society. How so? Vethner asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Every civilization in the galaxy believes that spaceflight is the ultimate achievement, the culmination of a species' potential. It requires unity, sacrifice, and generations of focused effort. We teach our children that no species can reach the stars without putting aside petty differences and working together as one. And the humans proved that wrong. Worse than wrong, Iral said. His crystalline form pulsed with anxiety. They proved that competition and conflict can drive progress faster than cooperation. They proved that a species can achieve greatness not in spite of their divisions, but because of them. If other civilizations learn this, they might abandon the principles that have kept the galaxy at peace for 10,000 years. They might start competing with each other, just as the humans did. Vethner considered his words carefully. She understood his concerns. The Galactic Council maintained order through the shared belief that unity was the only path to advancement. The humans had shattered that belief without even knowing it. Their existence proved that everything the galaxy believed about progress was wrong. There is something else you should know, she said after a long pause. Something we found in the most recent excavation. She led him to a dig site that had been kept secured from most of the team. Inside a sealed chamber, preserved by environmental controls that had somehow continued functioning for 3,000 years, they found a message. It was carved into a metal plate, surrounded by mathematical symbols that served as a translation key. The message was brief. It had been left by the last humans to visit this place before their civilization finally fell silent. Vethner read it aloud, her translator converting the words into the common galactic tongue. To whoever finds this, we tried. We built ships that flew faster than light. We colonized 1,000 worlds. We met other civilizations and learned that we were unique in all the galaxy. They asked us how we achieved so much so quickly. We told them our secret. We never stopped competing. We never stopped trying new things. We never let failure stop us because there was always someone else willing to try a different approach. We rose because we were many, not because we were one. Remember us. And perhaps learn from us. Ambassador Ural stood in silence for a long time after Vethner finished reading. The weight of those words seemed to press down on his crystalline form, dimming his light further. The implications of the message were clear. The humans had known they were different. They had embraced their differences as a strength rather than a weakness. What happened to them? He asked finally. If they were so successful, why is their world dead? Why did they fall silent? Vethner had asked herself that question many times since the excavation began. The evidence suggested a slow decline rather than a sudden catastrophe. Colonies that gradually lost contact with the homeworld, ships that stopped returning, a civilization that expanded so quickly it could not maintain itself. Perhaps they had simply outgrown this planet and moved on to new challenges. Perhaps they rose too fast, she said. Or perhaps they simply moved on and forgot about this place. We found references to colonies on thousands of worlds. They might still exist somewhere, continuing to compete and innovate in ways we cannot imagine. The thought was both exciting and terrifying. Somewhere in the galaxy, the descendants of these impossible humans might still be out there, still competing, still driving each other forward, still achieving what every other civilization considered impossible. They might have grown beyond anything the Galactic Council could comprehend. Vethner looked up at the pale sky, wondering if somewhere beyond the stars, human ships were still flying. The galaxy was vast, and the humans had proven they were capable of filling it with their endless ambition. She hoped the galaxy would be ready when they finally returned.